Welcome back to Cities on Console. Welcome if you are new. Today we will be digging into what might be the dev diary I have looked forward to the most to this point, as we are finally getting to look at all the maps and themes in Cities Skylines 2. Of course, there will be many more maps and themes released throughout the game's life cycle with add-ons and DLCs, but for now we are at least getting all the details on all the maps that will be available when the game releases in October. But before getting into the video, I want to ask you to consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already, and to drop a like if you end up enjoying today's video or finding it informative. And as always, please also feel free to drop a dislike if not, as any and all engagement is welcome and helps me improve the channel and make more of the content you all find helpful, entertaining, and worthwhile. But without further ado, let's get into this week's dev diary. To get started, let's have a brief comparison between the map sizes. In Cities Skylines, the playable area consists of 5x5 tiles, 9 of which can be purchased once everything is unlocked. One map tile is 1.92 by 1.92 kilometers, which results in the total playable area being 92.16 kilometers squared, with a maximum of 33.18 kilometers squared to build a city on. In Cities Skylines 2, things are a bit different. For starters, one map tile is much smaller, roughly a third what it is in the predecessor, but you are able to unlock almost all tiles, giving you a whopping total of 441 map tiles. This results in a playable area of 159 kilometers squared, which is roughly 5 times bigger than in Cities Skylines. Additionally, the map tiles do not have to be connected to each other, so technically you can create small, isolated pocket towns, and you can purchase the map tiles all the way to the edge of the map, where you can create new outside connections. The map height limit is much higher than before, adding much more flexibility and freedom in how your dream city will look. Now, talking about themes, in Cities Skylines, these control the natural environment of a map with predefined settings for each theme. When we talk about themes in Cities Skylines 2, we're talking about the styles of roads and buildings, with the options of European and North American themes being selectable when you start a new map. But we will get back to them later in this diary after we have a proper look at the maps themselves. So off the bat in this little intro here, there are a few details we touch on that are pretty important. The fact that we can get 441 map tiles that results in a playable area which is roughly 5 times bigger than we had in the original game. Now, keep in mind, this is just with the 9 tile limit, so people like myself who played Cities Skylines on console or in vanilla on the PC even, you would have been restricted to this 9 tile system throughout the life cycle of Cities Skylines. So for us, that is a massive, massive upgrade. On the other hand, for those of you who played modded Cities Skylines on PC, if you had the 81 tile mod, the playable map in Cities Skylines 2 will actually be a little bit smaller than what you are used to. There's a few different angles to take with that. Of course, there's going to be mods that come out to let you use the whole map anyway and grab those extra few tiles, so it's neither here nor there, but worth mentioning. But moving on, the Brave New World. Each map introduces different challenges through various landscapes. To begin your new city, you will need to choose a map from the new game panel. When a map is selected, you will see the most important details of the selected map, such as the default theme of the map, climate information, which we'll get into next week, latitude telling you which hemisphere the map is located in as well as how the seasons work, buildable area available, the familiar natural resources that we know from the first game, and of course, which outside connections already exist on the map. So again, we're going to be able to create our own outside connections when we reach the edge tiles of the map, but it is always going to be super important to know which connections we start with in the early game before we can actually reach the edge of the map and, take control of that stuff ourselves. It'll be very important to know what we can use from the start. But getting back to the article, once you have found a map suitable for your new city, you can adjust several options before starting the game. For example, you can choose a name for the city, change the default theme if you want to, enable or disable various gameplay options, and decide if you want the tutorial to guide you through your city building experience. Most of these options can be adjusted later when loading your city with the exception of the map theme and whether the city obeys left-hand or right-hand traffic rules. So that makes sense to me. If you didn't have natural disasters on, for example, you can turn it on mid-game just to spice things up. it wouldn't make much sense to be able to change the theme right in the middle of the game. And of course, the traffic, trying to change that mid-game would just be a nightmare, even if it were possible. So this all makes sense to me. But getting into our first picture here, it gives us a shot of the map options and says check the settings you want enabled before starting your new city. So again, this is pretty familiar, but I talked about this in the featured highlights reaction video. One thing I really like is the tutorial option. I imagine this will be very useful for someone like myself who might need to break some of the old habits from the first Cities Skylines, but especially as well for the new players who are going to be entirely new to the series, or for that matter, possibly new to city builders altogether. And I also like that this menu gives us a glimpse of the range of temperatures we'll face throughout the year. This will definitely matter, considering the introduction of seasons in Cities Skylines 2, something we didn't really contend with in the first game. And of course, we have all the normal stuff with the pre-existing outside connections, natural resources found on the map, all that stuff. And again, being able to choose the theme and not being locked into it based on the map itself is something I'm looking forward to. I could see building on the same map twice even, once as a North American themed city, the other time build a primarily European city. I could see that being a fun kind of challenge even, especially in the early days with only the base game maps before we get any new DLCs, content creator packs, and whatever new maps and themes those might bring over time. I think being able to change the theme this time around adds a lot of replayability to the maps. And next we get into unlocking map tiles. Sticking with the familiar gameplay, new expansion permits are unlocked as you reach each milestone. A brand new city starts with 9 map tiles unlocked, which is roughly the same starting area as in Cities Skylines. With these expansion permits, you can unlock new map tiles and continue to grow your city. This happens through the map tile UI, giving you a top-down map view. The camera can be moved around and rotated, allowing you to find the best suitable areas to expand into. Selecting a map tile shows important information, such as the buildable area, resources, and of course how much it costs, and right-clicking the tile will deselect it. You can select multiple tiles at a time and see the combined cost before finally purchasing them. The cost depends on the size of the buildable area and on the availability of resources. And it says select one or more tiles to purchase anywhere on the map you wish to expand your city. So we'll look at this image here. Cool. And again, I spoke at length about this in the last video, but I really do think the move toward smaller tiles and not needing them to always be adjacent to tiles you already own is a literal game changer for us. You won't have those experiences that we faced in the last game where you had to buy tiles just to get to other tiles, or just to get a tiny portion of that tile that you actually wanted to use. This opens maps up a ton, especially for vanilla or console players like myself, as I keep saying, and it's going to allow us to finally have similar experiences to PC players and allow us to build to a similar scale. And moving on to the maps themselves. So now we're getting into the stuff that I'm looking forward to the most. When creating the maps for Cities Skylines 2, we had a goal of providing you with a diverse set with various amounts of interesting scenery. To some degree, all the maps take inspiration from real-world locations. Perhaps you can even recognize some of them. Being able to unlock such a huge area also let us create more varied terrains, as you can fully utilize all of the available resources and outside connections on the map. So let's have a look at the maps themselves. Yes, please. And the first one we get a look at here is Archipelago Haven. This map is based on a cluster of islands with a chain of smaller and bigger islands surrounded by bodies of water on all sides. The map includes atolls, lagoons, peninsulas, and keys, and small low-elevation land formation. Your city will have easy access to outside connections via highway, train tracks, ship routes, and airways, with the highway going across the map connecting the 2 main islands. Build an island city on Archipelago Haven. Awesome. I think this looks really great, and just as a little geography lesson in case anyone doesn't know. So for those of you who might not know, an archipelago is essentially a land formation that is made up of multiple islands. It's sometimes referred to as an island chain or an island cluster. Some real-life examples of archipelagos are the British Isles, as are the Japanese islands, or even New Zealand. And we can vaguely see off in the distance a few smaller islands to kind of give us an idea of how the archipelago is going to be laid out. And another thing I find quite cool with this one is that it mentions atolls and lagoons. So an atoll is essentially a ring-shaped island that includes a coral rim that surrounds a body of water called a lagoon. And it also mentions keys here, which are small sandy islands that basically form on the surface of a coral reef. So even though we can't see too much detail in the islands off here, it sounds like there is going to be a lot of detail involved. So I think this is going to be a beautiful map once we can get kind of an overall view of all of it. So that's something I'm looking forward to for sure. And next we have the Barrier Island. Inspired by Barrier Island formation, this map features long island chains parallel to the mainland, separated by a bay. So that is actually quite literally what a barrier island is. It is an island off of a mainland that essentially forms a barrier to the mainland. The islands are mostly flat, which allows you to easily build a city, and while the highway and train tracks run across the mainland, you have easy access to the seaways as the starting tile is placed on a barrier island. The flat islands also make building an airport easy, letting the city benefit from the airway connections to the outside world. Barrier Island is ideal for a coastal city. This is another one that I think is beautiful. Again, it's very limited what we can actually see, but what I can determine from this is there is going to be so much vast, empty, virtually flat space, perfect for building. But you also have these beautiful hills in the background. You see these little islands throughout, and this bridge actually looks really nice. So looking forward to this one as well. And next we are looking at the Great Highlands, which draws inspiration from the Highlands region in Scotland. Mountain ranges dominate the region, but the area also includes long, narrow, and deep lakes typically known as lochs. The highways and train tracks run between the mountains and along the coast. You can find a few scattered rocky islands and formidable cliffs, along with access to the seaways. So another one, like they said, these are all kind of based on real-world locations, which I find quite cool. This one in particular, the Highlands of Scotland. And it asks, will your first city be nestled among the mountains of Great Highlands? And again, another beautiful map, and also, again, massive, vast, expansive, flat space to build. So this is a massive upgrade from Cities Skylines, where I felt like there were very few maps that you even had a generous buildable area without having to go in and just landscape the life out of it. And I know a lot of people enjoy that, but for me, the purpose of playing a city builder is to build cities. I don't want to be stuck landscaping a ton of the time. So this move toward these vast, expansive, flat areas is also very, very welcome change for me. Can't say enough. And then we get to Lakeland, which is inspired by the Finnish Lakeland region, which they of course had to include in the map because they're based in Finland. Cool. It provides lots of calm water with numerous lakes of similar shapes and many smaller islands. The landscape holds plenty of green areas and forests, and the flat areas with a few rolling hills provide a great foundation for any city with a northern European look and atmosphere. Surround your city with the peaceful lakes of Lakeland. So this map is based on an area that is largely inland, actually, but with lakes all throughout. So there might be some sea off on the edge of the map somewhere, maybe out here, can't quite see. It might have some sea connections, but it will primarily be based on an inland region. So don't go pumping too much sewage into these lakes, because they're not rivers, they're not connected to the sea necessarily, they're not going to have anywhere to go. So it looks like water treatment plants are definitely going to be the way to go on this map. But again, beautiful, lots of flat space, tons and tons of water, which I think would be quite fun to tie in some little island towns and things. So another really good looking map. And next we have the Mountain Village. Taking inspiration from small cities located along the Alps mountain range, this map brings converging rivers flowing across the map and gentle slopes stretching down from the mountain base. This creates a broad valley divided by large rivers where you can build a glorious city between the snow-capped mountain peaks. The serene valley of Mountain Village is ready for a bustling city to spring to life. So I'm personally really excited for this one. Something about those snow-capped mountains just really does it for me. I can already imagine the views of a sick little city down in the valley surrounded by these snow-capped peaks. And I think the snowcaps just add a special touch to the whole area for me. And you do have this gorgeous little network of rivers it looks like you can see branching off, running through, and again, massive, flat, vast, open space for building. Again, beautiful, beautiful map. Next, we are looking at River Delta. This map features a large, curving river flowing down a gentle slope, breaking into a delta before eventually flowing into the sea. The river is guided by the hills on the edge of the map, which leaves a plenitude of flat terrain to build the city. Expanding into the delta allows for great access to the seaways and the creation of interesting island neighborhoods. Build a city as the river meets the sea at River Delta. So that's quite funny. I was literally just talking about, the flat terrain and the creation of interesting island neighborhoods on that other map. So they're highlighting that on this one. And yeah, again, same sort of situation. Some really pretty looking mountains in the background, tons of little islands you can build on, and again, massive, vast open space. Also here, I just want to take a second to look at and appreciate the trees. The trees look much better than they did in the original Cities Skylines, and very obviously the game can support so many more of them. So I don't know if that's a huge deal to a lot of people, but to me personally, love a good tree. Very glad to see that they're improved in Cities Skylines too. And then we have the Sweeping Plains, which is inspired by the New Zealand Canterbury Plains and features a broad expanse of flat land covered by grassland ready for development. The map has access to a wide coastline, and on the opposite side of the map, the mountain range creates a marvelous landscape. The plains in the central part of the map provide a great place to build any city. Between the mountains and the sea, you find the flatlands of Sweeping Plains. And again, sticking with the theme of humongous and flat. Not really much to ask for beyond that. I really do like, though, that you got some, cliffs out here. I could see little nature reserves or something going on with these. And then the open ocean back here, just beautiful. I can imagine a nice city through here, and then zooming in and getting that look out over the sea. Just gonna look really, really cool. But yeah, again, another super cool map. And next we have Twin Mountain. Drawing inspiration from Iceland's coastline and the iconic cliffs, you will find two separate flat-topped, steep-sided Tuya mountain formations. A small river runs across the map, down the slope toward the ocean. Along the coastline are numerous cliffs and hidden beaches with good access to seaways and shipping routes. The map doesn't feature an existing train track, so expanding to the edge of the map is essential if you want to create one. But you can, of course, still provide your city with train infrastructure without an outside connection if that fits your city. And of course, what they mean by this is if you want to actually use trains to import and export, whether that is actually cargo or passengers for tourism, you will need to expand to the edge of the map, right? But if you just want to use an intra-city train and just use that to move goods or people throughout your own city, then of course you can do that without reaching the edge of the map. But if you want to be able to have any train traffic going into or out of the city, you'll need to set that up via your connections manually. Make Twin Mountains the home of your city and take advantage of all the map has to offer. And beautiful. Again, I really like the touch of the snow. I think that is really nice. One thing that's a little unique about this map, you can see it's kind of like got this slow, gradual increase in elevation, right, up to the mountains. Down here, it's kind of all flat on the coastline, but you can see as it moves inland, sort of, all the way down, you can see this kind of slight increase in elevation. So I think, that presents opportunities for creating some cool little mountain roads, some little mountain towns, that kind of thing. Lots of ideas pop up immediately when I look at something like that. So cool, yeah. This one's a little bit unique compared to some of the others. And again, super excited for it. And next we have the Waterway Pass. Two colossal mountain ranges create natural map borders on two sides, while the playable area is split by a meandering river flowing across the whole map, with train tracks and highways on either side, providing easy and quick access to the outside connections, and the wide riverbanks leave lots of room for a growing city. So that's a bit of a run-on sentence. That was a mouthful. But again, beautiful map, and this one also looks a bit unique compared to some of the others. So let your city grow at the banks of the river at Waterway Pass. And yeah, again, you have kind of these gradual increases in elevation on either side, but a ton of open, flat area with the rivers running right through the middle. I think that is actually beautiful. And it looks like, an homage to Cities 1. We saw one earlier as well. But you have these ruins like we saw in the original game, and those actually look a little better than they used to. And I think it would be interesting to see where these are on the map and maybe incorporate them into your city. I used to do that a lot in the first game. But yeah, again, very cool map. Nothing to complain about so far. And finally, it looks like our last map is Windy Fjords. Windy Fjords is inspired by breathtaking fjord coast formation and has several long and narrow inlets surrounded by steep cliffs. Each inlet ends in a small bay area and starts from one sea edge of the map following a similar pattern. Nestled between the mountains is quite a large buildable area with the possibility of accessing the top of the fjords via narrow slopes. What kind of city will you build among the mountains of Windy Fjords? So actually, this has got to be up there with my favorites, along with, what was that other one? The Mountain Village. So the Mountain Village is definitely up there, but Windy Fjords, now, this one's definitely a contender as well. I really like the way this bridge runs across the island, but kind of keeps flat all the way across. I really like this river running through, the sheer number of mountains and hills throughout. And again, looks and sounds like it's going to have massive buildable area. So this, very pretty map from what I can see. Of course, these are only two tiny shots. I kind of wish they included more with all these maps. But it's kind of nice at the same time, a little bit of a teaser. So I appreciate it, and I can't wait to get a better look at all of them. But yeah, again, super cool map. Looking forward to building on it. And now that we've been through all the maps, we quickly talk about outside connections. Each map comes with at least one road connection, and most of the maps have pre-built train connections and seaways as well. All of the maps also have an airway connection. Of course, you just need the sky, right? You don't really need much for that. And power lines running through them to import or export electricity. Some maps have multiple highway connections right at the starting tile too, offering even more options. Cool, so this is kind of true to Cities 1. I mean, obviously the power lines thing is brand new. But the fact that, some maps will have train connections, others won't. Some maps will have connection to the sea, others won't. That's all pretty normal and kind of what you would expect. And if it were any other way, to be honest, it wouldn't be very realistic or challenging. And I like that that's still the same. But again, huge difference this time around is that if you do want intercity trains, you can now create connections yourself once you reach the edge of the map. So you don't have to choose a map that already has those connections for you. There are a lot more options available to us now, so that's really cool and a good thing to keep in mind. But getting back into the article, in addition to the outside connections already on the map, you are able to create outside road, train, and ship connections once you unlock the edge of the map. Yeah, so what we were just talking about. As discussed in the previous development diaries, you can also create electricity along with water and sewage connections to the outside world, enabling trade of those services. The only outside connections you cannot add to the map are airways. You can freely connect to the already existing airway connection points once you construct an airport. So again, it's kind of a silly thing that they even feel like they need to mention this. I don't know if people would think otherwise, but all you need for an airway connection is literally air, right? It's just the sky. So there's no need to create your own airway connections, right? The sky is there. It is limitless. You're always going to have airway connections. So, but anyway, cool. We'll move on from that. And this just shows us how we can add connections. So in this particular case, it is a railroad. So add a new train outside connection by dragging the tracks to the edge of the map, and we'll just kind of zoom that in. It looks like it's going to have, maybe it's even like a snapping point once you reach the edge here, and this outside connection, you know, arrows going either way, I guess is going to be our symbol to let us know that, yep, if you place this, this is going to create the connection. So pretty straightforward stuff. Again, I hope it's not like it literally just ends in the middle of nowhere once we're in the game and actually playing. I know in Cities 1 there was a little bit more of like a fog that would kind of like block where the traffic was being generated. So I hope it's something like that in Cities 2, and we're not just able to, you know, get to the edge of the map and, you know, vehicles and trains and things are just magically appearing from one spot. It'd be kind of weird, but we'll just have to see how that goes when we get the game. And lastly, the final subject for today is themes. When you start a new city, you can choose between European or North American, which defines the street markings, traffic lights, vehicle models for certain city services, and other roadside props. While each map has a theme connected to it, you can choose your favorite, but once you start your city, it can no longer be changed. So this just reiterates to us, and kind of as we saw with the menu earlier, each map has kind of its own predetermined theme, but you're not locked into that. So if the map suggests you use the European theme, you can still change it to North American or vice versa. But moving on, the visual style of residential and commercial zone buildings also depends on the selected theme when the zone is created. It will default to the map's base theme, but you can freely choose between the available themes when zoning, and you can even create a mixed city using both themes. Lastly, some public transportation stops have different visuals depending on the selected theme, and as with the zone buildings, they can be customized in-game. So that's actually very new, because in Cities Skylines, you know, we ended up getting like district styles where it sort of could function in this way, where you could set certain themes in certain districts and neighborhoods, what have you. But it really only worked for residential and commercial buildings. It didn't work for service buildings and that type thing. So I think that's actually super cool that they can be customized in-game. So if you do want to have, you know, a little European themed town somewhere off, you know, as a suburb of your North American city, you can do that and kind of keep to the theme even with the service buildings and emergency response vehicles and that kind of thing. So that's really cool. Yeah, I don't think they had told us that. We hadn't heard that before, so that's a really cool thing to now know. And we get another image here saying medium and high density residential buildings of European on the left and North American on the right. So cool. On the right side we have the American themed buildings, and you can kind of tell, it seems with all these like flat style roofs that we keep seeing, a lot of the buildings kind of have that style. Whereas the European have more of these sort of triangular shapes or just angled in general. So, and actually they're not super distinct. Like they really look like they go well side by side, but kind of just gives you a slight variation in architectural styles that you can use throughout your city, which I think is super cool. And I'm really interested, you know, as the life cycle of Cities Skylines 2 kind of goes on with different DLCs or content creator packs or whatever we might get, what other themes might be introduced along the way. You know, instead of having just the North American and European themes, maybe we end up with some sort of Asian themes or even African themes, Middle Eastern themes, that kind of thing. I know they played with that a little bit in Cities 1, where we had, you know, the Heart of Korea content creator pack, we had an African content creator pack. So they've definitely played with that idea in the past. And I think that was gearing us up for things to come in Cities 2. But I don't want to speculate too much into that. We'll move on from here. And as this brings us to the end of our video, I've got a few little notes here. I'm curious to see snapshots of the San Francisco and Tampa Ray maps that will be coming as pre-order and expansion pass bonuses. But I'm liking what I'm seeing with the game's 10 base maps. They seem to offer so much more flat, buildable space than we got with most maps in Cities 1. And the environments look so much better as well in comparison. One thing I always struggled with in Cities Skylines was to find a map I actually wanted to play on, but I could honestly see building on every single one of these maps we looked at today. And also with both themes. As I've said a number of times, I just could not enjoy the European themes, whether it was the maps or the architectural style or service buildings, any of that stuff. in the first Cities Skylines game, but I really like the look of all of it, both European and North American in Cities 2, so I'm definitely going to be playing with both, which will be new for me as well. But anyway, I want to hear what everybody else is thinking. Overall, are you guys happy with what we know about maps and themes in Cities Skylines 2 now? If you've made it this far into the video, please leave a comment and let us all know which of these maps you're looking forward to building on the most. Where do you think your first city is going to be built? And lastly, I truly appreciate you hanging out with me today, and I want to encourage you to consider subscribing if you haven't already, and to hit that like button as well if you enjoyed today's video or found it informative. Alternatively, of course, as always, if you didn't enjoy the video, please feel free to leave a dislike as well. But with all that said, I want to sincerely thank you again, and I hope you all have a great day.